In the beginning, he was everything I ever wanted. Sweet, caring, almost too perfect to be real. But then things changed, slowly. The affection turned into silence. The compliments became questions. And me? I was falling apart. Piece by piece. The worst part? He planned it all. This isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's a warning. Because when someone pretends to love you just to break you, they don't leave scars. They leave ghosts. My name is Scarlett, and I should have noticed from the very first moment that something was wrong. But when you're desperate for love, you ignore all the red flags. It was a rainy Tuesday in October when I met Ethan at the corner cafe. I was trying to balance my laptop, a hot cup of coffee, and a wet umbrella when everything crashed to the floor. And then he appeared. "Let me help you with that," he said with a smile that seemed straight out of a romantic movie. Ethan had piercing green eyes and a smooth voice that made me completely forget about my embarrassment. He didn't just help me pick up my things, he bought me another coffee. "To replace the one you lost," he said, winking. He was charming, attentive, and interested in me. We talked for 2 hours. He asked about my dreams, my fears, my family. He seemed genuinely fascinated by every word I said. When we said goodbye, he asked for my number with an adorable shyness. "I'd love to see you again, Scarlett. You're special." I should have questioned why someone so perfect was interested in me. But I didn't question it. I simply fell in love. The first 2 weeks with Ethan were like a fairy tale. He sent me good morning texts every day. Flowers appeared on my desk at work, and he always knew exactly what to say. "You light up my world, Scarlett," he told me during our third date. "I've never met anyone like you." He took me to expensive dinners, introduced me as the most incredible woman in the world to strangers, and made me feel like I was the only person who mattered in the universe. Messages arrived every hour. "Thinking of you. Are you okay? Can't wait to see you again." It was intoxicating. I felt loved in a way I had never experienced before. Ethan seemed to know all my preferences. He showed up with my favorite book, which I had only mentioned once. He took me to my preferred Italian restaurant without me ever telling him which one it was. It was as if he was paying attention to every detail about me. "How did you know?" I would ask, surprised. "When you truly love someone, you pay attention," he would reply, kissing my forehead. I was completely enchanted. My friends commented on how radiant I looked, how I smiled all the time. I thought I had found my Prince Charming, but Prince Charmings don't exist. And Ethan definitely wasn't one. It was at the end of the first month that I noticed the first subtle change. Ethan canceled our Friday date at the last minute. Something urgent came up at work, he said via text. "Sorry, love, I understood. Work is work." But then he stopped responding to my messages for hours. When he finally replied, it was just, "Sorry, I was busy." On Saturday, he didn't send me the usual good morning message. When I asked if everything was okay, he said, "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" But there was something different in his tone. Colder, more distant. "Maybe you're being too clingy, Scarlett," he said when I mentioned missing him. "Healthy relationships need space." Clingy? I had never been clingy before. But maybe he was right. Maybe I was being too needy. I started questioning myself. Was I sending too many messages? Was I being too intense? I began holding back, waiting for him to reach out first. And the more I held back, the more distant he became. It was as if he was testing how far he could push me. And I, desperate to maintain our perfect love, let him push me further and further away. The second change was more obvious. Ethan started giving me the silent treatment for entire days. After an argument about him being 2 hours late for our date, he simply stopped talking to me. 3 days of complete silence. I sent messages apologizing, even though I didn't know what I was apologizing for. I called, but he wouldn't answer. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist for him. On the 4th day, he showed up at my door with flowers and a smile. "Sorry, love. I needed time to think," he said, pulling me into a hug. "You know I love you, right?" The relief was so intense I almost fainted. He was back. My Ethan was back. But this became the routine. Anything I did that he didn't like resulted in days of silence. And every time he came back, I was more grateful, more willing to do anything to prevent it from happening again. I started walking on eggshells around him, weighing every word, every action. Would this irritate him? Would this make him ignore me again? The fear of losing his love became stronger than my own sense of dignity. "Are you sure you said that?" Ethan asked me during dinner, looking at me. As if I were crazy, I was certain he had agreed to pick me up at 7 p.m., but he arrived at 8:30 saying we had agreed on 8:30. "No, Scarlett, you must be confusing it with something else. I never said 7 p.m., but I was sure." Or was I? This started happening frequently. Conversations I swore we'd had, promises he denied making, plans he said had never existed. "You've been very stressed lately," he would say, touching my face with false concern. "Maybe you should see someone to talk about your anxiety." Anxiety? I had never had anxiety problems before meeting him, but the more he questioned my memory, the more I began to doubt myself. Maybe I really was confusing things. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. I started writing down our conversations. But when he found my notebook, he was furious. "Are you spying on me now?" "This is obsessive behavior, Scarlett. You need help." He made me feel like I was paranoid, controlling, unstable, and the worst part, I started believing him. "Your friends don't like me," Ethan said casually after meeting my best friend Emma. "Of course they do," I replied, but he shook his head. I felt the hostility, especially from Emma. She's clearly jealous of our relationship. I hadn't noticed any hostility, but Ethan insisted. He started making comments about how my friends were toxic and negative. "They don't want to see you happy, Scarlett. Miserable people love destroying other people's love." Gradually, I began spending less time with my friends. When they invited me out, I made excuses. When they called, I cut the conversation short. "You've changed since you've been with him," Emma told me one day. "You seem dimmed." But I didn't listen, or rather, I listened. But Ethan's voice in my head was louder. "They're trying to break us up." Slowly, my social circle shrank until only Ethan remained. And when you only have one person, that person becomes your entire world, even when that world is crumbling. Ethan became a master at keeping me off balance. One day, he was the most loving man in the world, telling me I was his soulmate. The next day, he was cold and critical, pointing out all my flaws. "You've gained weight," he said casually during breakfast. "Maybe you should think about taking better care of yourself." I hadn't gained weight, but I ran to the mirror and suddenly, all I could see were imperfections. The next day, he showed up with an expensive gift and told me I was the most beautiful woman in the world. "Sorry about yesterday, love. I was stressed about work. You know I think you're perfect, right?" This emotional seesaw left me constantly anxious. I never knew which version of Ethan I would encounter. The loving one or the cruel one? The one who lifted me up or the one who destroyed me? I began living for the good moments, those glimpses of the man I had fallen in love with. And the rarer those moments became, the more precious they seemed. It was like a drug. The highs were sky high and the lows were devastating, and I was completely addicted. "You always do this," Ethan said when I spilled some coffee on the table. "You're so clumsy." This was any small mistake I made. And according to Ethan, I was always making mistakes. The way I laughed was too loud. The way I dressed was inappropriate. The way I spoke was embarrassing. "I'm not trying to be cruel," he would say after each criticism. "I just want you to be the best version of yourself. That's how true love works." But it wasn't love. It was systematic demolition. Each criticism was a small explosion in my self-esteem, and Ethan was surgical in his choices. He knew exactly where to attack to cause maximum damage. "Your family must have been disappointed when you didn't finish college," he said one day. It was a lie. My family supported my decision to work early. But the way he said it, with that cold certainty, made me question whether I had misinterpreted their reactions at the time. I began seeing myself through his eyes, flawed, inadequate, lucky to have someone who tolerated me despite all my failures. Let me handle the finances, Ethan suggested when we moved in together. You're terrible with money. I wasn't terrible with money. I had been financially independent for years, but he insisted it would be more efficient if he managed our expenses. Gradually, my financial independence evaporated. Ethan controlled the household budget, decided what we spent money on, and always had an opinion about my personal expenses. Do you really need that dress? He would ask when I wanted to buy something. We don't have money to waste. But he always had money for the things he wanted. His hobbies, his outings with friends, his whims. When I questioned this, he made me feel like I was selfish and materialistic. I thought you loved me for who I am, not for what I could buy you, he would say, making me feel guilty for even questioning. Financial. Control was just another way to keep me dependent on him. Without my own money, without the ability to make independent financial decisions, I became a prisoner in my own life. It was by chance that I discovered the truth. Ethan had forgotten his laptop open, and when I went to close it, I saw a chat. Conversation that made my blood freeze. It was a conversation with a friend, dated 2 months before we met. Found the next one, Ethan had written. Vulnerable, needy, perfect for the game. How long do you think it'll take this time? The friend replied. About 6 months to break her completely, maybe less. She's already halfway broken. I kept reading, my hand shaking so much I could barely hold the laptop. The trick is to make them fall in love first. Love bomb them, make them feel special. Then you start gradually withdrawing. They get so desperate to get that initial feeling back that they'll do anything. You're diabolical, man. It's an art. Breaking a woman psychologically is much more satisfying than anything else. And the best part? They always come back asking for more. There was more. Much more. Conversations about other women he had broken, photos they had sent him, shared like trophies, intimate details about their insecurities, their tears, their desperation. And then I saw my name. Scarlett is almost ready. A few more weeks and she'll be completely destroyed. Then I can move on to the next one. Everything made sense now. Every romantic gesture in the beginning, every sweet word, every perfect moment. It had all been calculated. Ethan had studied my vulnerabilities like a predator studies its prey. He knew I was coming from a difficult relationship. He knew I had self-esteem issues. He knew exactly which buttons to press to make me fall in love, and then which ones to press to destroy me. The cafe where we met? He frequented there regularly, looking for targets. My accident with the coffee? He had probably observed my routine and planned to be there at that time. My preferences? He guessed. He had stalked my social media, talked to people who knew me, built a detailed psychological profile. I wasn't special. I was just another victim on a long list of women he had chosen to destroy for fun. The nausea was instant. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left in my stomach. Then I sat on the cold bathroom floor and cried like I had never cried in my life. It wasn't just pain. It was humiliation. It was rage. It was the realization that everything I had believed in for months was an elaborate lie. When Ethan came home, that night I was waiting for him with the laptop still open to the incriminating conversation. Explain this, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. For a second, I saw something I had never seen on his face before. Genuine panic. But it lasted only a second. Scarlett, you're invading my privacy, he said, slamming the laptop shut. This is a violation of trust. Violation of trust? I repeated, incredulous. You plan to destroy me from day one, and I'm the one violating trust? You're misinterpreting, he said, his voice taking on that condescending tone I had learned to fear. Those were just jokes between friends. Silly guy talk. You're being dramatic. But I wasn't going to let him convince me I was crazy this time. Jokes? I screamed. You called destroying women psychologically an art. You have intimate photos of other women. You planned every moment of our first dates. You're having a breakdown, he said coldly. Maybe you should take your medication. I didn't take medication, never had. But this was another one of his tactics, planting seeds of doubt about my mental sanity. No, I said, standing up. I'm not going to let you do this to me again. It's over, Ethan. I know who you really are. That's when I saw the real Ethan for the first time. When he realized he couldn't manipulate me into believing his lies, the mask fell completely. You want to know the truth? He said, his face transforming into something cold and cruel. You've been pathetic since day one. Desperate, needy, easy to manipulate. It was almost boring. The words cut like blades, but somehow they hurt less than I expected. Maybe because I was finally seeing the truth. Did you really think someone like me would fall in love with someone like you? He continued, each word dripping poison. You're mediocre, Scarlett. In everything. Looks, intelligence, personality. I was doing charity staying with you for so long. Then why did you stay? I asked. For the challenge, he replied with a cruel smile. To see how far I could push you before you broke completely. And you almost broke, didn't you? A few more weeks and you would have been begging for scraps of attention while I humiliated you publicly. He moved closer to me, his eyes gleaming, with a cruelty that made me step back. But you know what the most pathetic part is? Even knowing all this, part of you still wants me. Still hopes I'll say it was all a misunderstanding, that I really love you. And the scariest part? He was right. Even seeing his true face, a broken part of me still craved his validation. That night, Ethan went out to drink with friends, probably to brag about how he had been discovered, but still managed to hurt me. I used that time to do something I should have done months ago. I called Emma. Scarlett? She answered on the first ring. My God, are you okay? It's been months since we talked. I told her everything. Every manipulation, every lie, every moment he had made me question my own reality. Emma listened in silence, and when I finished, she said, Come here. Now. Bring only what you need. We can get the rest later. I packed a suitcase quickly. My hand hesitated over some things, gifts Ethan had given me during our love bombing phase. But then I threw them in the trash. I didn't want any reminders of that farce. I left a simple note. I'm leaving. Don't look for me. When I arrived at Emma's house, she hugged me tight and I finally allowed myself to feel the relief. I was out. I was free. But physical freedom was just the first step. The real battle would be rebuilding who I was before Ethan systematically demolished me. I started therapy the following week. I learned about psychological abuse, narcissistic manipulation, and how emotional predators choose their victims. Most importantly, I learned that nothing that happened was my fault. Today, 2 years later, I'm telling my story not to seek pity, but to serve as a warning. Ethan is still out there, probably choosing his next victim. Men like him don't stop. They just find new targets. Here are the signs I ignored that you shouldn't ignore. Excessive love bombing in the beginning. If someone seems too perfect, if they make you feel like you're the most special person in the world right away, be cautious. True love grows gradually. Isolation from your friends and family. If someone constantly criticizes the people you love and tries to convince you that only they truly understand you, it's a giant red flag, making you question your own reality. If you find yourself constantly confused about conversations you had, promises that were made, or events that happened, it might be gaslighting, financial and emotional control. If someone tries to control your money, your schedule, your decisions, that's not love. It's control. Most importantly, trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. It took me time to heal completely, but today I know my worth. I know I deserve real love, not the toxic imitation Ethan offered. And if you're living through something similar right now, know that it's not your fault. You're not crazy. You're not being dramatic. And most importantly, you can get out of this. Because when someone pretends to love you just to break you, they don't just leave scars. They leave ghosts, but ghosts can be exorcised, and you're stronger than you imagine. My name is Scarlett, and this was my story. If it saved at least one person from going through what I went through, then telling every painful detail was worth it. Because no one deserves to have their soul demolished for fun. No one deserves to be treated like a game. You deserve real love. You deserve respect. You deserve someone who builds you up, not someone who destroys you. And if you're one of Ethan's victims or someone like him, know that you're not alone. We survived, and you can too.